Councilman Beltman treated the council members to some cupcakes, and to the mayor's got a candle. We're going to invite everyone that's here to join us in a round of happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Deb. Happy birthday to you.
And I can say, you're all still here. Thank you very much. Thank you, Carol. Thank you. Well, okay, now I gotta get my mind back in order. So we'll start with our opening ceremonies for the June 2, 2025 council meeting. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And join me for a moment of silent prayer. Amen. Okay, agenda item number 3 is approval of tonight's agenda. I don't think there's any additions or changes, so if there's a motion to approve. So moved.
Support.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item number 4 is a time that we provide for citizen comments on non-agenda items. I'm not sure anybody's here for that. If you are, I welcome you to the mic, but not seeing anybody, we'll go ahead and we'll move on to agenda item number 5, which is approval of the minutes from the May 19, 2025 council meeting, and that's Exhibit 1 in your packet. And if you have a chance to review those, I would, if there's any changes, or I entertain a motion for approval. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I heard Olivia's eye from the kitchen.
He's just bringing a few extras out.
Oh, okay. Oh, to treat everybody. Hide over them. Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
Okay, agenda item number 6 is Exhibit 2 in your packet, and that's our real estate contract with Tulip Poison LLC. I think, Brad, we're calling on you. Is that correct?
Yes. I prepared that contract at Earl's direction. I think the terms are fairly straightforward. The special provisions under paragraph 14, additional provisions. I trust you all have had an opportunity to review those. I don't know if any of you have any questions about those. I can go through each one if you'd like, but these, as I understand it from Earl, were agreed upon with the Tulip Poison folks, and yeah, basically set out what the agreement is regarding the property. He says that maybe I just go through it, talk about 14 lots. The plat for those 14 lots will be approved by Orange City Planning and Zoning and, of course, the council. There's some covenants that will be platted or established for the platted subdivision. There is some provision for one house per lot, and then if someone wants to build on 2 lots, there's an agreement that there'll be a $1 million minimum assessment on that property. There will be an HOA established to manage the common areas. In this property, the new house construction will not be subject to the current tax abatement that we have in place for new house construction. And then the developer will be responsible for the subdivision costs for infrastructure, including but not limited to private streets, storm sewer, and utility hookup. And then if the developers sell out their interest in the property and there are lots unsold as of January 1 of 2041, then the city has the right of first refusal to buy back any proposed lots for purposes of development of those lots. So those are the special provisions, I guess. Other than that, I think it's pretty straightforward in terms of the agreement.
Questions for need a motion to approve it then, is that correct?
That is correct.
Support.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item number 7 is Exhibit 3 in your packet, and it's time for a public hearing on the disposal of city property. So we'll go ahead and just, it will be property to the Tulip Heisen LLC as they lead the moving forward with the property for Old West. So we're going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Earl, do you have anything to?
No, we haven't heard any comments in the office regarding the disposal of the public property. So, as Brad was mentioning, it's for the continued movement of the sale of the property for the Old West development in the old elementary location. So, it's a step that council would need to take. So it would need to finish the public hearing, and then it would take a resolution vote
To authorize disposal. So it is a public hearing. I'm not sure if anybody's here to share thoughts or comments or concerns, or we would welcome you up here. If not, your chance is gone. No, so we'll go ahead and we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and then we just need a resolution authorizing disposal. Support. And that's a resolution, so we will do roll call, and I'll start with you, Brett.
Yes.
Daryl?
Yes.
Olivia? Yes. And Rob?
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, agenda 8 is Exhibit 4 in your packet, and we're happy to welcome Brent Hinson here as for a proposal for a new city administrator. And Brett and I have been a little bit chatting. He helped us before, and gosh, what year was that? What was that?
2019.
19. So we welcome you back. We'll keep you safe during the weather in case something bad happens out there, but I'll turn it over to you, Brent.
All right. Well, thanks for having me here, Mayor and Council. Look forward to helping you out with the city administrator search process. As the mayor said, we were engaged when Earl was hired here a few years back. So glad to re-engage with you on this process. It's a very important process for the city. We have a great deal of experience doing this all over the state. We're just, we're working from the western border to the eastern border right now. It seems like there's nothing central right now, right? It just seems like we're headed all over the state. But we've done about, just numerous of these searches. I've been doing this since 2014. We've actually got members of our team that have up to 40 years experience doing consulting around the state. So we really think we're well positioned. We've got a good process, and it is a process that is adjustable to the city's needs throughout the process. We'll have numerous things that we'll talk about. They're mentioned in the proposal, and then also we'll talk about as we work through as far as the city's preferences for public involvement. Certainly we recommend a Big Ten approach with your key staff people, with your key community partners. We typically have a public reception as part of our interview process. But there's a variety of other things certainly that we can do depending on what you guys' preferences are. Ultimately, at the end of the day, this is the city council's hire. It's your position. It's, you guys are the boss of the city when you work together, as I'm sure you're aware. But you're well advised to have a Big Ten approach as you take on this process, because it is an important position in the community, and you want to have somebody that can work well with all the different segments of the community. Any questions before I kind of launch into a little bit kind of schedule-wise? Is that appropriate, Mayor?
Sure, you bet.
Okay. Yeah, so I provided a schedule in your packets. We do try to really stick to the schedule that we prepare. It kind of paces everything out appropriately get you on the track. And of course, in this case, we have a date certain for when Earl wants to dance off into the sunset. So we want to make sure that we've got adequate time to allow for that and to allow for a little bit of overlap for knowledge transfer. Certainly, our goal was going to be to try to find you somebody with some, good amount of experience in this area. So, you shouldn't have to train them from moment one or anything. But at the same point, they're going to have to, there is a real good benefit from having some overlap and having that handoff. So we want to allow time for that. So really, we're in pretty good shape as far as schedule goes. Obviously, I'm talking to you here tonight. We will, basically within the next month or so, we've got 4th of July in there. We've got some other stuff going on. We've got some other search schedules that we're working with as well. But we'll come here to Orange City. We'll arrange to meet one-on-one with each of the city council members, the key staff, anybody else that you guys want us to meet with. What our plan would be is we'd coordinate with Deb on that. So if you have any suggestions or et cetera during the process, just mention those to Deb and she'll make sure to mention those to us. Then that way we kind of keep it coordinated.
Excuse me,
yeah,
would that
please.
be when we would have maybe different members from the city to like the?
I think it's useful sometimes to bring in your Chamber of Commerce director. Sometimes we'll meet with kind of some top business people. Those types of things. It just depends on what you want and who you think can provide good input to help us during the process.
Because the city administrator does a lot with the college and
Exactly.
both high schools, and so those would be important, I would think, too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's well advised to be thinking along those lines. Certainly, when we get to the interview process, we'll also want to engage. There's maybe a possibility for even more engagement when we get to the interview process with some of those folks. Yep. And so, as I said, we are trying to stay on a schedule here. So really just kind of have noted for your calendars, it's probably going to be that week that ends in July 11th. So it's probably going to be that week of the 7th that we're going to be wanting to arrange to come to Orange City to meet one-on-one with you guys. If we can't make it work for your schedule, we can always do Zoom, but we do like the, opportunity to sit down, in person with you if possible, if we can make that work. Basically, we will develop information from those interviews. We have added a step to our process from last time, which is we do a survey of staff and elected officials on organizational effectiveness, how things are going. We found that's really good to provide good input to the council on basically things to work on. Even though, Orange City is a lovely community, and I'm sure you guys have many things, you're very much on the right page with where you need to be. There's no perfect community. There's no perfect organization. The organizations that are successful are the ones that can kind of put the issues out on the table, discuss them, and work through them productively. So we see that organizational effectiveness survey, and then basically that would culminate in me putting together a presentation for you, and when I come back on August 4th, giving you a presentation on that, with the results of that, talking through that, answering questions, etc. That meeting is also when we would be getting ready to go out to advertise for the position. So it would also be approval of what we call our position profile, which is the document that we develop to advertise to candidates. We actually are, good sign of your the lovely community you have here. We've actually already had a couple reach outs from candidates saying, "Hey, is Orange City opening up soon?" So that's good. That's a good sign. There's a couple very good candidates. So anyway, just a little preview for you, and we'll try to deliver you plenty of good choices. But basically, what we have, we advertise about a month, so then we'd be coming back to you the middle of September. What we like to do is kind of a back-to-back. We will bring you recommended candidates. We'll take a look at those. So I've got proposed September 15th. And then we turn around and then do interviews, Zoom interviews of those candidates, so virtual interviews of those candidates on the 17th. We like that quick turnaround. And then basically what we're setting up is finalist interviews October 3rd, 4th, which is a Friday, Saturday. So typically what we do for those of you that weren't engaged last time, typically it's come in on a Friday afternoon, kind of have your Chamber of Commerce roll out the red carpet, tour of town for the candidates. And then turn around on the Saturday and and have a public reception that night, and then turn around and do interviews of the candidates on Saturday. We try to do all our due diligence and research in advance, including reference checks, etc. So the council's in the position, if you're ready to offer the position, that you can do it that weekend. So that's kind of what we're working towards. So just take a look at those key dates as we move forward here. If you have conflicts, there's still a little bit of time for adjustment, but it's sort of at a certain point we'll get to the point where we're pretty locked in and we need to stick with the dates, especially once we get to the advertising stage. Basically, we like to have those dates nailed down so we can tell the candidates, hey, here's what the dates are, and then that keeps everybody on the same schedule, and we've just never run into a circumstance where somebody said, oh, shoot, I have a conflict. Well, we put it in the position profile, what the dates were, so they really don't have that excuse, and we don't get that. So we really like to have very clear messaging to the candidates as we get into this, and people like that certainty. So that's what I've got. I'm happy to answer any of the questions you guys might have.
We just have had a good working relationship with Brent, and he kind of, like he said, he knows Orange City, and there was I don't know, did anybody see that article on Facebook about the quirkiest communities? We're listed as one, so I don't know what that means, but we're quirky, so Brent.
It's probably the roundabout.
Yeah, the roundabout. But some of us have been through that. I know that it'll be new.
Well placed with our DOT friends here.
And for what it's worth, in Mason City, we actually have a plan we're working on now for all roundabouts on the west side of town on our commercial strip. So we're just following Orange City's lead.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I know that was Darren's first council meeting or vote, I think, back in 2019. So this will be a new experience for Olivia and Brett. But anytime you have questions, he's very reachable and always willing to talk. So I'm thinking what we should, if you don't have questions, go ahead and ask them. But we probably should have a motion, if you're okay with it, to approve of honoring or of hiring Hinson Consultants for city administrator hire.
I'll make the motion.
Okay. Any questions? Anything you have for Brent right now? Or I appreciate the handout and for you driving up here. Really appreciate that. So if there aren't any other things, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Excellent.
Thanks again, Brent.
Thank you so much.
Be careful out there if the weather's a little quirky.
Yeah. The weather's a little quirky.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay, that takes us to agenda item number 9, Pizza Ranch Dutch Front reimbursement.
Rod sits on that committee. Kurt's not here this evening, but you had implemented a few years ago the repair portion for existing Dutch fronts, and so a maximum of $5,000, but 50% of that. Actually, this repairs at the Pizza Ranch Financial Building came in at $78.58, so the city share would be $39.29.
Any questions on that? What's that?
Is that for the windows up top?
Yeah, it was the areas up on the upper level that were showing some rot in the woodwork, so they were going with different materials to redo that.
Any other questions, or is there a motion for approval?
So support.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item number 10 is we need to, is Exhibit 5 in your packet, and it's a resolution setting salaries for the 2025-2026 fiscal year. This was part of the union negotiations that we had and part of our, so I don't know if Janet or Earl have anything to.
Yeah, appreciate Janet went through the work putting this all together. Janet, did you have anything you wanted to share about it? Or
No.
Pretty straightforward this time of the year with fiscal year beginning July 1. So part of the collective bargaining agreement was a 4% increase for city employees. The library has their own board and has established a little bit different. They were at 5% for their employees for this fiscal year.
And that comes out of their budget.
That comes out of their budget. So all the council does for the library is set their budget, and then they work within that. So this comes as a just follow up to what had been approved earlier, but needs to be approved by resolution.
Any questions? Or is there a motion for that resolution?
Motion to approve.
And it is a resolution, so we'll do a roll call, and I'll start with you, Daryl.
Yes.
Olivia?
Yes.
Rod?
Yes.
Brett?
Yes.
Excellent, thanks, guys. Agenda item number 11. We welcome our dynamic trio from the Department of Transportation to report on the TEEP study for Highway 18. We also have, what?
10?
What did I say? Highway 10, what did I say?
18.
18. Oh, sorry about that.
Okay, Deb.
That happens with age.
You were thinking of your
Yes,
age.
I was thinking of my age. Yeah, well, that's even, what I am no longer. But we also, we're glad to have representatives from the MOC Valley and Northwestern College who are greatly impacted by Highway 10. So welcome and thank you. You have a PowerPoint, is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
And is this for like nighttime reading or something?
Yes. Very comprehensive.
The whole report is a couple hundred pages.
I know.
Yes, so thank you for having us today. My name is Sarah Tracy. I'm the DOT District 3 Transportation Planner, and I brought two of my friends from the DOT with me. So if you guys want to introduce yourselves.
Sure. I'm Bethany Waltersdorf. I'm the District 3 Traffic Technician, so I mainly do signing.
And then I'm Jessica Felix. I'm the District 3 Engineer. I oversee the primary highway system for the 19 counties here in Northwest Iowa.
Okay. All right. So as you mentioned, the report, the very thick report, it's full of data and facts and all sorts of information that engineers love. But hopefully what we'll accomplish today is I will walk through the presentation. I'll really focus on the recommendations of the TEEP study. And then obviously if you've got any questions or want to have a conversation, we can have those. So I will get started. So the reason for the study on Iowa 10, that the city wanted some assistance on identifying safety and traffic improvements along Iowa 10 with a focus on pedestrian safety at Northwestern College. So that's why we're here. That's why the study was done. There were 8 study intersections. So 8 intersections were looked at as part of this study. And as I go through the recommendations, we'll hit each one of them. I don't think I'll go through the list of each of the 8, but there's an illustration of where they all are. I'm sure you're all very familiar with these intersections. So, all right, so the scope of services for the study. The consultant that did the study, Shive Hattery, they collected turning movement volumes. They collected speed data and conducted a traffic speed analysis. They reviewed relevant crash history and traffic data, conducted traffic operations modeling. They evaluated pedestrian operations regarding safety. They provided planning level cost estimate for the recommendations, which that'll be the focus of what we'll talk about today. And then, they developed the report with the following recommendations. All right. So this is the first slide that kind of starts talking about the recommendations that they would have for Iowa 10 through Orange City. So the first recommendation deals with sidewalk infill. So the sidewalks along Iowa 10 in their current state have several gaps on both sides of the roadway. There's instances where some of these sidewalks direct pedestrians into parking lots. So that's probably not something we want to do for pedestrians. And so the recommendation there is that these gaps be filled, as shown in the red, with 5-foot sidewalks. And then accessible curb ramps should be provided at all crossings. So when we're talking about pedestrians, we're going to naturally talk about ADA. And so there's some guidelines and things that you need to do regarding ADA, and those are addressed in here, but that's an important piece as well. So the sidewalk infill, that is a recommendation. Another kind of overall general recommendation, and you'll see it when we start talking about specific intersections, but lighting improvements. So adequate lighting at these pedestrian crossings is vital for safety. According to the Federal Highway Administration, 76% of pedestrian fatalities occur at night. So again, just a fact pointing to that lighting's pretty important. So a recommendation is that sufficient illumination be installed at each of the pedestrian crossings. And then just kind of a comment that a singular light source, which we have at some of these locations, is usually not enough. So as part of these recommendations, when we get to each of the intersections, you'll see that additional lighting is recommended. And I think it's usually on that north side of the crossing there, but we'll get into that. I think kind of a third kind of general recommendation, again, before we get into specific intersections, is installing additional pedestrian advance warning signs. Those signs should be fluorescent yellow-green. That figure is just illustrates the different pedestrian signs that you're going to see in the recommendations. Also noted is using high visibility pavement markings at a minimum 6 foot wide. So that width should be a minimum of 6 feet. And again, you're going to see at certain locations they'll call out if it's not that 6 feet. We've got it in some locations, and then some locations don't. So it'll be called out. And then signage, pavement marking, traffic signal, all these improvements. There's just a note here to coordinate with the DOT district, and that's the three of us, and we're here discussing this and available. So, all right, so now we get into specific recommendations. So these are what they called Northwestern College pedestrian crossings because they're right there by the college. So I guess if you're following along with the intersection numbers, they're marked on the figures. These are intersections 2 and 3, and I think the recommendations at these locations just deal with the lighting. Like I said before, there's 2 additional light fixtures identified on the north side of Iowa 10 that would be recommended for those reasons that we just discussed about the pedestrian lighting. So those are the recommendations at intersections 2 and 3. And then probably the big one here is what is at the study intersection number 4. In the TEEP study, they looked at 4 different alternatives at this location. And what I'm showing you here is what was recommended. Also in the TEEP study, there's a table that kind of lists each alternative and the pros and cons of each. But in the essence of time, I'll focus on what was recommended on there. So at this location, they're we're recommending to remove the crossing entirely, to relocate the accessible parking space to a point along the half circle driveway. So again, we've got nice figures here that show what the recommendation is calling for. The reason for removing this crossing, so it removes the conflict point entirely. and then it redirects pedestrians to the study intersection number 3, which is only 240 feet to the west there. So it's eliminating conflict point where pedestrians are, conflicting with vehicles. So in order to encourage the compliance, and it's shown on the figure, landscaping and other physical barriers are recommended to dissuade pedestrians from attempting to cross here. I think, as we all know, a lot of times pedestrians will take the easiest route, so that's why that is included in there. Removing that crossing also aids in allowing drivers to dedicate more attention to other crossings. So, and then another benefit of this is it provides more accessible handicap parking. So
Crossing 4 is where we had the pedestrian versus vehicular accident. And part of that is because crossing 5 is at the intersection with Albany and Iowa 10, and then less than 500 feet, you have 2 more crossings. And so it's a lot to take in if you're a driver. And so sometimes more crossings is not better. It's worse from a vehicle versus pedestrian standpoint. So we're kind of trying to, I kind of use the farming analogy, you're trying to get all the livestock to go down the chute. That's pedestrians to cross at a designated one where maybe it's just more expected.
And I think here, just due to the proximity of what's marked on 3, we felt like that crossing could be eliminated and direct them over to 3 since it was so close. Okay, I'll keep moving along. Other recommendations, now these are at the MOC Floyd Valley High School pedestrian crossing and Refuge Island. So again, on this slide, you'll see the figure of what was recommended here. Pedestrians do desire to cross at this location. The nearest crossing to this one is over 500 feet and it's to the west. So there's not a lot of opportunity in this area to cross, and pedestrians are wanting to cross here. What is recommended, as shown on the figure, is that a pedestrian refuge island be constructed on that west leg of the intersection with Hartford, using the appropriate crossing and advanced signage, again, that's shown there. And again, we're going to see an additional lighting fixture. So that's kind of a theme throughout these recommendations. And then it provides a controlled crossing point between the high school and that Casey's, which, yeah, that's where a lot of them, want to go cross, get to the Casey's and go between the high school and Casey's. So,
Can I ask you a question on
sure.
this? And if it's in the report, I apologize that I don't know.
Oh, did you miss it?
When some of this development was originally happening, we talked about would it make sense to move that driveway that's to the east into MOC's property, to move that in line with Hartford instead of having it back, because now you're kind of coming over a crest of the hill from the west to the east, and there's cars that are stopping to turn to the right. And I didn't know if you looked at that as part of your evaluation or not, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. You have those offset intersections that are pretty close together. So you've got...
I don't know what that distance is, but it's not that much.
We have discussed it with Shive Hattery. They were trying to be what's attainable without making the school district reconfigure or, do these big, huge changes, right? So anytime you can line up a driveway with a local road or 2 local road legs of a local road, it's better than if it's offset in this case. So, that could be an add-on to this from a long term is to look at that. The other thing that's in the report is, once that sidewalk's built, a highly trained crossing guard can also be beneficial here during, those peak times of before or after school. So those are usually pretty effective, even though it's a designated crossing. Kids then learn that they're not gonna jut out into traffic, and those drivers know what the state law is, but if they have to slam on their brakes and worry about getting rear-ended, it just, again, you can platoon those kids across with a train crossing guard.
I think one last benefit that was identified of here with Refuge Island was if somebody is coming, wants to head westbound from Hartford, it just gives additional visibility to those pedestrians. So that was the recommendation identified here. Okay, so now that took care of the college and the high school. Now we'll hit, I guess, the rest of the intersections and the recommendations that they have at each of these locations. So Iowa 10 and Iowa Avenue intersection study intersection number 1. They've just identified some pavement markings and lighting improvements there. So those are identified on the figure. Nothing too crazy there, but you do see the light fixture again. Okay, and then intersection number 5, that's Iowa 10 and Albany Avenue. There's more going on here, as you can see. So there's recommended signage, pavement markings, geometric, traffic signal, and lighting here. So I'll just kind of walk through what those recommendations were. Curb ramps be relocated to create accessible paths for all pedestrians. And then the next recommendation deals with the traffic signal. The existing traffic signal equipment is currently located at the same place as the recommended curb ramps. So I think this combined, I think the condition of the pedestrian signal equipment here is fairly poor. So that led to the recommendation to replace the traffic signal. Ultimately, that was one of the recommendations. It's recommended that the new signal be installed in conjunction with the other geometric and pavement marking recommendations. So you would tackle those at the same time. Should be noted that right-of-way will need to be acquired on the southeast corner to implement these recommendations. And then finally here, in order to comprehensively improve pedestrian connectivity on the south side of the intersection, sidewalk improvements along the establishments on Albany Avenue to the south should be investigated further. So there's a few things going on here at this intersection that they recommended. Any questions on that one? I tend to maybe go through them.
Yeah, I apologize if it's in the report and I missed it. This is a high truck corner. Did your study look at what's needed for trucks to turn to go out to our industrial area? I see them bumping up on curbs regularly. I think they take something out on Northwestern's property occasionally. That corner gets rode on. I mean, was there any analysis done of that?
This would be probably more of a planning level type study, and when you get into implementing the recommendations of the study, that would definitely be something that we would need to be looked at as far as the truck turning movements.
Oh, maybe Jim knows too. It seems like trucks are bumping up on Conoco, on Northwestern. I don't know as much on Scotty's, but they're bumping up
every day.
Okay.
But that, we'll make a note of that as you get farther into the development here and looking at these recommendations, you would need to, look at those turning movements. Yep. All right. So then there was a mid-block. It's east of study intersection number 5. At this one, there's an existing rectangular rapid flashing beacon and a pedestrian ahead sign traveling westbound. So care should be taken when determining the precise location of the light fixture. So here they're recommending, as shown on the figure, that a light fixture be placed there. They want that there, but make sure it doesn't interfere with what's going on there with the RRFB. And then at this one, like I talked at the beginning, recommendation of the high visibility crosswalk markings that are a minimum of 6 feet in width. So that's recommended to be upgraded there. Okay, intersection number 6. This is Iowa 10 and Frankfort Avenue. The recommendations here are removing the mid-block crossing on Frankfort Avenue, provide a crossing at the north leg, provide accessible pedestrian ramps. Again, you're going to see that with almost everything. Provide new push buttons and pedestrian signal heads on the northeast and south legs. And then finally install pavement up to the signal pole on the northwest side to provide accessible facilities to the pedestrian push button on the pole. So those are the recommendations for that intersection. A lot of information here. So this is intersection number 8. It's Iowa 10 and Lincoln Avenue. The recommendations there, again, they're shown on the figure. Each street crossing should have its own separate curb ramp, and each curb ramp should adequately direct the pedestrian the same direction as the crossing. And those were the recommendations for that intersection. Okay, so we've made it through the recommendations for all the study intersections. The recommendations cost estimate, so that is table 2 that is in the report. I apologize if it's not super easy to read, but it lists all the recommendations at all the study intersections. It also includes a time frame. So if you were looking for, I guess, low-hanging fruit, so to speak, there are some short-term ones identified on there. And then there's other long-term. So short-term and long-term are identified on there. And then pricing and costs are listed as well. And then they've got some notes if you don't want to flip back and forth to each of the intersections. So this is a pretty comprehensive table that basically this is what is recommended. Okay, so we talk money. Then next we talk about potential funding sources. So there's several potential sources of funding. Each one of those is listed there on the slide. It's in the report. If you would like me to walk through each one of those, I certainly can. But Jessica, do you have anything to highlight or point out on the funding sources?
So any of the signs along Iowa 10 that are in the report that ask to be like upgraded for reflectivity or the color or repositioned, we pay for. That's not a cost of Orange City. Bethany comes in, usually folks are very excited because we'll give you the signs, our staff will install them. Okay. The pedestrian crossings, we don't paint those. Those are the cost of the city. At intersection 1, I believe if those 2 local roads that connect into Iowa 10 are this Iowa Avenue are platted, then we will paint the stop bars. So, and I can always ask the paint crew to do that other little local road connection since they're already there. Typically, if they're already painted, they'll just take care of it. Lighting is the cost of the city. And then as we get into like a lot of this was head curb ramps, construction, and ADA. We do have an ADA program that's to replace if it was already there. And some of this is new construction, that pedestrian curb ramp grant program, you can apply even though you're over 5,000 in population. The design costs would be Orange City. The funding would be for the sidewalk, ramp, and dome only. So if any of that infill of sidewalk would not be covered under that grant program. It's limited statewide though. I do have faith though in this group. You guys are very good at justifying and figuring out how to get preference and priority. So if any city can get it, it would be this one. So
What was the article?
that's the
What they call you? Porky?
They are resourceful.
There.
That's better. I like that.
So, and then the U-Step, that a lot of communities use that for a lot of their signal timing, traffic signal type things. So,
TSIP also for signals and different pedestrian things. So if there's a new RFP that you're looking to install or new signals, the TSIP funding can also help with that.
right now, we do not have an improvement for pavement coming through town. But, you know, like if something were to come up, we would always look at those partnerships. I know, you know, you had spoken about the operations on a few of these. You know, if we're gonna go change sidewalk configurations, those domes and where the locations of traffic signals are, we would want to like help you further refine that design to take into account truck turning movements and those mountable curbs, right? So you guys are kind of used to those mountable curbs on the roundabout. We've done similar now in Sioux Center. Sorry to speak of your neighbor, but
As long as we did it first.
so they're not as expensive as most people would think, you know, and your city crew might even be able to pour it. So. It is a beefy report. I will say 2/3 of it is data. There is speed data on the back. We are gonna, now that this report's done and we have that, we are just verifying and reviewing speed limits and speed zones. And then Oregon City is on our list for speed feedback signs on Iowa 10. So I am thinking that's at least 6 months out though, because there's a long waiting list and we wanna make sure we got the proper equipment. So we buy those, we put them up, and then they're yours.
Those are the signs that would show how fast you're going? Okay. Yeah, we've discussed those at some different places, would be very helpful.
Yep, and we can work with you on where we put them, or, you know, if you have a preference, like, so.
Did any of that data about speeds or anything surprise you or alarm you? Just pretty normal?
Also included in there is, so each of those recommendations, there's a table that's included. That's pretty helpful. Sidewalk infill, you know, it lists what funding sources there would be potential for. So that's what that table is there. And then last slide, if we're open to questions, discussion, each one of our contact information is listed there, and we can help answer questions. We'd be.
So to be fair to say that any of these recommendations that we would implement or anything else that we would do, either sidewalk infill or changes to crosswalks, those kind of things, that's in the state right of way, we need to work directly with you and get your approval. If the college thinks they have a better idea, it's like, no, we still need to make sure we work directly with you when it's in the right of way.
Yeah, and if there's something you want to brainstorm, I mean, we can get a small working group together and, you know, work through that going, okay, we're considering this with, you know, what's I like to call it, what's the guardrails? So is there a solution that is a win-win-win? So between both schools, the college and the high school, DOT in Orange City.
I did have one question on that refuge by the high school. I mean, it showed it in kind of in green. Are you kind of creating a green space there, refuge?
They're showing
or was
a
that
green-
just for showing here that it was just
They're
showing
showing a
you where it
green
was?
space. I think the challenge there would be long-term maintenance, right? So it's why in another community we recommended the AstroTurf.
So yeah, Highway 75. There's a lot of AstroTurf along there. It might be that type of.
Yeah, or you could do colored concrete. It's just
Yeah.
it becomes when it gets cracked, or what do you want to do? So just trying to give. As
Yeah,
long as the tulips don't get taller than 18 inches, we're good.
Some of that green space in Highway 10, Albany as well, on all four corners, and it would seem to be a maintenance issue for
Be great for tulips.
2 weeks.
So when Mr. Hinson was here, he mentioned the roundabout, and I think when we had the TEEP study, we gave you the feedback. It's been very, very well accepted. People have really grown to appreciate it. We are working with a landscape company to do soft plantings in there because we feel like it's a safety issue, sending our maintenance crew to try and mow that.
Yep.
So we're trying to find a low maintenance, but our understanding was that it would be soft materials that would be on that.
Yeah, no fountains, no sculptures.
Right.
When you retire, they can't put a sculpture of you.
We should have done that. So-
Not more than 50.
Yeah.
But as long as it's something that, what I remember Shane telling us earlier is just as long as it's soft materials so that if something hits the,
You don't want it to become a projectile,
Yeah.
right? So but
yeah, okay. Thank you.
Council or President Christie, Ken, Mike, Levi, do you guys have any questions or concerns since a lot to take in?
You mentioned there's, the one that I would say for us is probably we've already had this conversation, but you mentioned there are 4 different alternatives for the number 4, I think.
Yeah.
So there are you're recommending that, which I assume that means there's leeway to look at the other 3 options, wherever those are.
correct. Yep.
Okay. Because that is it doesn't seem like much right now, but the building on the corner is our primary classroom building, not just for undergraduates, but for our physician assistant students as well. So in the summer, it's probably not a big deal to walk that far. In the winter, every foot matters in terms of so that's what I was wondering about, was what the other options might look like, because keeping something other than nothing would be preferable for us than eliminating altogether.
And the full study shows those different options in it. Right, yeah.
The current lighting that's pedestrian initiated on Northwestern's 3 and 4, is that something recommended for other spots that don't have buttons at all?
No, they didn't. I mean, they were very specific on where they thought the lighting could be improved. Otherwise, they thought it had enough lumens and enough visibility.
And this is the lighting that when a pedestrian wants to cross, they push the button?
No, this would be
Like a overhead?
overhead,
So-
like for lack of a better term, your Cobras, your street lighting.
Is this type of lighting, would that be beneficial? Is that something that you would recommend leaving?
I think the more you can see somebody crossing, the better, right? Because, college kids like to wear dark clothes.
Mm-hmm.
They don't necessarily think of can somebody see me? I will say backpacks and things now have more reflective strips, as do tennis shoes, but they're not really thinking like maybe some of us who see a lot more things where once it's dusk, if I'm walking, but I'm the district engineer, right? So yeah, I think anytime we can light things up enough, just so that we have no shadows and things. We're trying to give the driver the opportunity to see that pedestrian, because it is state law. Once you walk into the crosswalk, somebody's got to stop. So you also want to give them a fair chance to be able to stop. And yeah, to your point, that is probably the most intrusive one type of thing. You're trying to balance those type of needs. So we come in with a safety lens. Again, this is conversations and discuss trade-offs and what works.
Yep.
So.
Absolutely. No, we appreciate it. That's, as you mentioned, it started because we had a student that was, it could have been really bad. He's okay, but it was a pretty scary incident that happened. And so that's our primary concern is obviously safety. And the motorists who are coming through there, we don't want them to be safe as well.
I love Northwestern, but I do avoid going down Highway 10 when the kids are around, yeah.
And then as we've discussed with Northwestern before too, kind of that intersection, sorry. That 5 and 6 are kind of the gateway to your campus. So, you know, it does require some real estate to reconfigure some of that stuff, but that would be where that partnership and that discussion becomes of what kind of feeling does Orange City want and Northwestern as we give the gateway, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's a really important corner.
You know, like, in all honesty, the green that's closest to the intersection might be a mountable curb, right?
So define multiple curb. It's a little bit like the roundabout where you're not all the way up in the curb. It's not where you're designed to drive, but if your wheels run over there, it's okay.
Correct. So that gets to your point of the operations.
On the southeast corner of that intersection, that sidewalk gets really close then to that drive over, whatever you want to call it.
So then how we use these two are, let's say something were to come up, we see another funding source, you know, things are changing all the time at the federal and now the state level, programs and what's eligible. We have this deep study on record, we kind of refer back and Sarah and our design engineers do a really good job of going, oh wait, they might be eligible for this, or there's this new program. So it doesn't just sit on a shelf collecting dust. We kind of use this as a blueprint, right? So.
Does the high school see the kids going across to Casey's that often? I mean, is that?
Anytime we hold the ball game is the primary time that happens. After school, there's a few kids who cross there, but we've tried to eliminate that as an option for that time. During ball games, and it's typically not even our kids a lot of the time, so it's people who aren't familiar necessarily with our community, but Casey's is cheaper than the concession stand. That's where we're going. Gotcha. The conversation about moving the driveway in line with Hartford Place, I actually had that with somebody else today as well. Change the traffic flow there a little bit.
Does that make sense to the school?
It does. Maybe cost prohibitive right now.
Yeah.
Take a look at that.
So about 7 years ago, the Transportation Alternatives Program used to include like a safe routes to school. That goes back and forth. And that's one of the things we monitor is if they change that criteria, then these type of solutions would become eligible and kind of no-brainers, right? Right now, we don't have that in our toolbox, but if it were to come back, then that's one of these ones where we would go, okay, let's pursue that. But I would recommend if you guys decide to do like the sidewalk infill, do it all one shot, one set of plans, because you'll get one mobilization and it can just, if you decide not to do it yourself. So.
So moving forward, we just,
Yeah, I think we'll review as staff, and I'm sure have ongoing conversations with Northwestern and MLC Floyd Valley and say, okay, which of these things do we want to try and move forward? Kind of what's the low-hanging fruit? What's the bigger picture long-term? And then coordinate with the DOT office to say, how can we accomplish those things? So I'm sure there'll be some type of follow-up meeting is what we're going to need to have. So.
Just let me know and I'd be happy to get that scheduled for you. Whoever, I'll send it out and you guys can blast it, whoever.
Okay.
I guess one thing though would be is, does the city council want to move forward with the signing and the paint recommendations as far as like the stop bars? And the reason I ask that is so I can get that on the schedule for our staff to implement that as they can. So some of those crosswalks may change or not, but like we were talking about like the crosswalk ahead, if it's already there and permitted, we would upgrade those signs
Just
right
make sure
now.
they're all the yellow, green, and the right standard.
If no one takes issue with that, we were gonna intend to move forward.
I'm seeing our public works director nodding and saying yes behind you.
Okay.
So,
That
right,
works.
we're good for that.
And I know my sign guy in this area loves his job and takes pride in what it looks like, and I think they're all upgraded, but I'll check with him and make sure. So he watches out for you guys very closely. So it's Spike.
oh, Spike.
And Spike's retiring at the end of the year, and I'm very sad. So he's training up a good one, but yeah. So I'll double check with him and just have him take a look and see if there's anything we need to upgrade.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else? Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
ladies. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, really appreciate it. And okay, so then that takes us to administrative reports.
I had sent, some updates just on a few minor details to you last week, just for the public. It's summer, so all of the pool, rec, park programs are well underway as of today, I believe. There is it's a little congested at the Puddle Jumper Park with the beginnings of the pickleball courts. I don't know if they'll get to pouring this week, but within the next 10 days or so, they'll probably be beginning to pour there. And then the shelter house is going to start mobilization on the 9th of June. So there's just going to be a lot of activity, so encourage people to be cautious as they're traveling through that area. But otherwise, that's all I have.
Okay. Janet? Anything? Jim?
Nope.
Chief Dan?
Nope. Oh, I do it. I told you 2 weeks ago, whenever, that we were gonna go for that tour, check on the chassis, and that got postponed, so we're leaving Thursday.
Okay. Good. Thanks. Kim? Mike? I asked Mike if he wanted to, they had a pre-RAGBRAI inspection route that the RAGBRAI committee or whatever rides, and the RAGBRAI committee along with Mike and the chamber, they hosted I'll let you talk, Mike. They hosted this nice event on Saturday. It was very well done.
Yeah, RAGBRAI started their route inspection tour this week of the whole route that they take. So Saturday night we had about 70 people downtown. You guys set the permit for that. They brought in 35, and we just kind of showcased some of the stuff we had planned with decorations and that kind of stuff. Grilled them some steaks and chicken and had some beverages, and it was a nice night. You need gas money for the fire truck, yeah?
No.
Yeah, he gave rides. Yeah.
Dan gave gas or fire truck rides and stuff. There's one RAGBRAI social media lady that loves fire trucks, and she's never even gotten a ride in a fire truck until last Saturday night. So
Right.
Yeah.
We got her done.
Talk about those the tulips that I think kids and some of the senior Landsmere that painted
so
it.
in 2017 we did 600 coroplast tulips that kids could decorate.
As they left, right?
Yeah, and we decorated out on 460th. This year we had to get almost 1,000 just because of the growth. And so it was a certain age bracket. I'm not exactly sure, but kids
They're really
decorated
cool.
those, and some people out at Landsmere did as well. And we had, you'll see those start popping up, and then we'll line 460th with them again.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Good.
it was fun.
Yeah.
Then they left about 6 a.m. on Sunday morning, took a picture in front of the windmill, and took off. So
That's good.
They're on their way.
Good. Okay, thanks.
So Mayor, I just want to say they
Yeah.
were all seat belted for the DOT.
Were they? All see, okay. Did you clear that with Jim? Yeah.
I don't do enforcement.
You never know.
I have friends.
Ryan, do you have anything? No. Council, Brett?
Nothing.
Daryl?
No.
Livia?
No.
Ron?
No.
I'll just say, well, thank you for the birthday gift, and I celebrated with 6,300 citizens, right? If they want to
you go.
watch it, couldn't be better than that. So, just need a motion to adjourn. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.